Hello, mums, dads, in fact, aunts, uncles, grandparents, caregivers. If you're working with a child, supporting a child, coaching a child that's demand avoidant, good to meet you. You're probably in the right place. My name is Jem, and demand avoidance is what my daughter has. She is nearly 6 years old. This channel is dedicated to Ruby, and it's what it says on the tin. The Demand Avoidance Diaries is me sharing the challenges, the tribulations, and the small wins that I get in the hope that we can build more community and give one another hope so that we can get the best out of our children. So, on to the topic. How is it possible that, going to a professional and getting a diagnosis that your child is demand avoidant, or in our case, the diagnosis that your child has Autism Spectrum Disorder, how does that work against your child? Well, going back a couple of years or so, we waited a long time to find professionals, and it's not a secret, but demand avoidance is not very well understood globally, a bit better, I should say, in England. So when we got to the doctor's office and, we got some assessments done, some back and forth, we found that Ruby was on the autism spectrum, and we were relieved because, she had a diagnosis, it was a thing, and we thought, great, we'd finally get the support we needed. And the advice, it came quickly. It was around routines, visual schedules and firm boundaries, praise and reward systems, clear expectations, right? So structure. We were told that's how autistic children thrive, that they crave predictability. Consequences can teach them right from wrong, and positive reinforcement will give you the behavior that you desire. And I was a bit skeptical because that just sounded like conventional wisdom. But look, nonetheless, they're the expert, and perhaps we just weren't doing it right. So we put it into action. And you know what happened? Unfortunately, everything got worse. Because with Ruby, when we use these strategies, the more we try to build structure, the more she resisted it. And the more consistent we tried to be with boundaries and consequences, the more explosive her reactions became. And even praise, and we were told that's an important part, to praise the child, it made her visibly uncomfortable, and nothing was working. And I don't mean we weren't doing it right, because we were doing it right according to the advice of the expert, but it was all feeling so wrong. Ruby was struggling, and it felt like these strategies would push her further into panic and avoidance, which is what we found out later. We could just see the symptoms. So, self-study, long nights, reading forums, blogs and books, anything I could get my hands on. And eventually we started to see demand avoidance, or PDA, pathological demand avoidance, pop up. Now, this is where it gets confusing, and it confused me. Demand avoidance is part of the autism spectrum, but the strategies that work for typical autistic children often completely backfire on demand avoidant children like Ruby. And why is that? Well, because demand avoidance is rooted in the anxiety around demands, and any demands, even ones that seem tiny for you and I could be, resisted, and you'll see the fight or flight and freeze even if you were to ask Ruby to brush her teeth or to get your shoes on or to do X. So when Ruby felt pressure, even subtle pressure, her brain would go into survival mode, and her resistance wasn't defiance, wasn't her being rude, it was panic. So we learned. And that's when I realized the advice we'd been given wasn't just unhelpful, actively it was hurting my daughter. So let me show you the difference, because it's huge. Traditional ASD strategies, so the Autism Spectrum Disorder, is about clear structure and routine, like fix the schedule, same order every day. Firm boundaries and consequences. If you don't do X, then Y will happen. Praise and reward systems, reinforcing good behaviors with stickers or treats. Visualizing timetables, showing what's coming in the expected sequence. That predictability creates a world where the child feels safe. But Ruby does not have ASD. She has PDA, which is demand avoidance. And the strategies look different. For example, collaboration and negotiation. It's not you must do this, but how can we make this work together? Choice and autonomy, give them control, even over small things. Do you want to start with the shoes or the coat, Ruby? Low pressure language. Instead of, please everyone sit down, it's, I wonder if anyone feels like sitting over here on this lovely cushion. Another one, reducing perceived demands. So sometimes making the child feel like it's their idea, that works a treat. And above all of it, I've learned flexibility to help that child take on what you want them to do, but you can't be wedded to the outcome. So although that demand avoidance is part of ASD, the autistic spectrum disorder, if you were to use the strategies that the experts give you for ASD, for demand avoidance, you may well experience what we're experiencing. But it's not all bad, because there's some things that we use that were useful. So from timetables, instead of a strict rule with them, it was more like a menu. So you wake up, you could get dressed, or we could look at the socks, the stripy ones or the spotty ones, or I'm going to get dressed. Does anyone else want to join me? We stopped praising her for doing things she was already anxious about, and we started acknowledging her efforts in a much more subtle way. So I would say, I saw how you did that. That looked quite tricky. More quietly, without expectation. Because when you compliment the child directly, that could be seen as a demand. Now, most of all, we stopped seeing her behavior as something to fix and started seeing it as something to understand. Because, demand avoidance, it isn't defiance. Although it represents like that to the untrained eye, it's protection. And that realization really, really did change everything for us. Now, I often think back to the moment I was, in a doctor's office, and the checklist approach of one size fits all, ASD, blanket statement. I don't blame them, not entirely, but demand avoidance was not understood, and I'm not sure it's very well understood at times when I speak to people about my daughter's challenges. And I just wish someone had told us that autism, it's not a single formula, that profiles in autism matter, and that strategy, without understanding, it can do harm. And that's what we saw. We were using strategies for ASD, not for demand avoidance. And that is, I can't emphasize the importance of this any more than I have, right? Like, I wish I had a second opinion. I wish I was more confident in myself to learn about my daughter's challenges. And at the same time, I try not to be too hard on myself, because you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know where to start. And it's okay to feel like you can become an expert in your own child, right? You don't have to always sit down with the people that are qualified and have got the right, letters, after their name. I'm not discounting it. I don't want us to feel like I'm disrespecting practitioners, because there's some brilliant ones that I've met. I'm just saying it all comes down to being a student and learning about your child and their challenges, blending that in with different expertise and not relying on one opinion. Our children need us to essentially coach them through their demand avoidance challenges so that they can become emotionally healthy, so they can learn the strategies that they need to emotionally regulate and bring their best in the world. Not just a tick box list or a check sheet. And, we understand our kids, right? We see them day to day. So we should be involved in that journey. Like that's fundamentally the principle that I think about when I'm trying to help Ruby. Anyway, if that's been useful and you would like to like and subscribe, it would be incredible, because it helps the channel grow and it starts to spread the word so we can build a bigger, stronger community and raise awareness around demand avoidance. I think that's a great mission for us to have, to help build a world where we understand the needs of different people in different ways, and we can raise emotionally healthy children that become adults one day. Nice seeing you all. Take care. Bye.